in the Pac-12, but we'll get to that in a moment as Jon joins us again on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. Jon, the college football playoff expansion's in the mud. It's been neutered, at least for now, although at some point it's going to happen. How much of that has any impact whatsoever if it moves forward on the Pac-12 and their television deal?
Well, yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you got to figure that there's not an unlimited pot of money, right? So is the Pac-12 better off? The Pac-12 needs the playoff to expand quickly because it's really struggling to get a team when it's a 4-team event. But at the same time, ESPN, Fox, and others may have a little bit more money to spend on conference media rights if they haven't shelled out however many hundreds of millions or billions for the playoff. I mean, I have to think ESPN's got some kind of master plan, but they don't probably know exactly who's going to be bidding on the playoff. And it's an interesting, interconnection between those two events.
Jon, how does with George Kliavkov taking over a couple years ago and kind of now, I don't want to say figuring things out to the, like he said in an interview, he came from a different world and everything's been different. How does the league feel about his leadership so far and leading them into this TV deal because of his different perspective?
Well, I think there's two things. One is that any change in leadership was going to be an improvement, for sure. But he has, I think, they would give him, regardless of that, he would get very high marks from the schools for what he's done as a kind of a face of the conference and providing some proper messaging on national issues like the playoff or name, image, likeness, but also for work he's done behind the scenes to rebuild trust that had really broken down between the conference office and the schools, and to kind of get everybody rowing the boat in the same direction, where previously it was basically, 13 different directions. And so I think in that regard, the conference is better positioned to move forward with whatever the media rights looks like, whatever the playoff looks like, whatever name, image, likeness evolves into. I think they're much better positioned because of a lot of the work that he's done behind the scenes, rebuilding basically the culture of the conference.
How much of that positioning would you say also has to do with the alliance? Has that been, or was that made more bigger at the time than it really has been over the last year? Has that been as powerful of an alliance as people expected to be? How do you kind of view that whole scenario?
The alliance is kind of, I think the public and the media views it as a little bit of a letdown, right? It hasn't really. The three conferences did vote against expansion, right? They all had their own reasons, but otherwise, I think the alliance is viewed as a letdown because there hasn't been any firm scheduling matchups created. I take a little bit of a contrarian view. I think the alliance was a huge success because, in my opinion, the number one goal of the alliance was to prevent additional realignment beyond Texas and Oklahoma. And in that regard, for the Pac-12, I view it as having been a defensive mechanism. If you sign in or, get the Big Ten and the ACC presidents to agree to promote stability, you are naturally getting them to basically say, we're not going to come try to poach USC, right? Mm-hmm. Or Oregon or Washington. And so in that regard, I think the alliance really worked well for the Pac-12 because it stabilized the environment.
Jon, how valuable or is it